In the late 1970s and then the early 1980s, George Lucas conceived and then produced 3 movies that changed the landscape of cinema forever. Star Wars and its sequels broke box office records and they created a devoted fan base. George Lucas retroactively recast his original film as Episode 4, and he plotted out a trilogy of trilogies that would take years to produce. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, finally arrived in 1999, nearly 2 decades after the original, and it would be another 16 years for Episode 7, The Force Awakens, to appear. However, for a multitude of reasons, it's fair to say that these additional trilogies had a mixed reception from audiences. But what if I were to tell you that there is a sequel trilogy that advances the Skywalker storyline, that recaptures the magic of adventure from the original stories, whilst also bringing new ideas to the table that respect the concepts already in place, where each instalment manages to tell a cohesive, gripping single story, but when all 3 are put next to each other, they manage to represent a cohesive whole? What if I were to tell you that the Star Wars sequels that the fans were originally looking for was written back in 1991, that it was authorised by George Lucas, and it was hailed as an instant classic upon its release, and that their immense positive reception led to renewed interest in the science fiction franchise, an explosion in popularity that arguably paved the way for it to return to the silver screen almost a decade later? Enter Timothy Zahn, an acclaimed author who had written several other stories of note, including Spinneret, which won him both an Analog and a Prometheus Award for being an excellent libertarian science fiction novel, and a space opera trilogy known as the Cobra series, that recounted super soldiers tasked with defending human colony worlds from interstellar threats. Zahn was tasked by Bantam Spectra, a division of Bantam Books who themselves are owned by Random House, with producing the first official continuation of the Star Wars story since 1983's Return of the Jedi. Well, actually that isn't quite true. To test the waters, Del Rey, another division of Random House organisation, had published several books featuring characters such as Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, who each individually had a trilogy of stories filling in their backstory before the original films. The first truly original Star Wars book had been written all the way back in 1978, and Splinters on the Mind's Eye was written originally as a potential follow-up to the first film, and it stands as a remarkable alternative direction that the franchise could have gone in right from the start. But in 1991, Timothy Zahn was responsible for one of 2 projects in the Star Wars universe that launched that year. Bantam Spectra would publish Heir to the Empire, and its 2 sequels, each as a full-length novel, over the next 2 years. These books reached number 1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, and they had an overwhelmingly positive reception, with over 15 million copies sold. At the same time, Dark Horse Comics published Dark Empire, a 6-issue comic series. Both of these depicted the further adventures of Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie and the rest of the core cast in the years that followed the defeat of the Empire. These characters had become influential players in the refounding of the Galactic Republic, and the characters all find themselves acting as either diplomats or, when necessary, warriors defending the hard-won peace from the original movies. Han and Leia are now husband and wife, and Luke is now a full Jedi Knight looking to refound the Jedi Order. All of them are living in difficult times because, although the Emperor himself is dead, the war is far from over. And it's fascinating to see how seamlessly Timothy Zahn crafts new storylines which take this setting but uses them to tell a completely original tale. He brought in new elements that would subtly reshape the franchise but allow him to tell a different story that has some similarities and shared plot beats with the original films, but important new aspects that differentiate them from any of the precursor movies. I mean, most notably, Timothy Zahn came up with the idea of the planet Coruscant, a place that's never even referred to once in the original movies, but a concept that would become embedded as the home of the Galactic Empire, The idea of a single planet so completely overrun by an urban metropolis, which was the seat of the old Republic and then the home of the Emperor himself, was a concept too good to pass up when George Lucas took back the reins of the franchise with The Phantom Menace. Fans would probably say that the most obvious invention is the character of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is one of the few original inventions from this time period to carry over into the post-Disney era Star Wars universe. Thrawn is a character designed to make the Empire feel intimidating again. He's not a clone of Darth Vader or the Emperor, he's something new, a tactician who revels in the hands-on approach to intergalactic combat. Thrawn drives these books. He's responsible for every action or scenario that presents itself. And he's a very intimidating threat, both to his allies and his enemies. We rarely see anything directly from Thrawn's perspective. Like Darth Vader in the original movies, he's largely seen through the eyes of his subordinates, in this case Captain Gilad Palayan, who reports directly to him and then repeats his orders to the forces of the remaining Empire. Thrawn is shown as a man who values critical thinking throughout, and Zahn takes time to contrast his approach with that of his predecessors. Scenes that would have resulted in swift and merciless punishment by Vader are not repeated. Thrawn does not blindly lash out to those beneath him when met with bad news, although he's not without a vindictive side. He takes time to judge where he should apply force, and where he's best just to leave alone. He also takes pains not to underestimate his adversaries, and shows a remarkable foresight for their actions throughout this story. Thrawn and Palayan begin a chain of events that would functionally cripple the rebirth of the New Republic when they travel to the planet Wayland, a tropical world used as a storehouse by the Emperor to keep secret, experimental technology and equipment in case the Empire should ever require them. This was kept a secret for many years, and is dug up by Thrawn as the first step on the rebuilding of his empire. Now Zahn is a little secretive about exactly what the technology Thrawn seeks is. He lists both cloaking shields and several other small, almost insignificant additional tools, but the purpose and use of these is not made apparent. What is learnt quickly is that they require a means of defending themselves against a rogue Jedi Master, Truest, who has been hiding away on this remote planet throughout the days of the Empire. Thrawn recruits Truest to work with him. They form an alliance, and Thrawn wants to use his powers to enhance the skills of his troops. Now, here Zahn works in some important concepts about the use of the Force to control and manipulate people's minds that was hinted at but never directly outlined in the original films. Thrawn wants both to mentally interface with his troops, to spread his mind out across the vast reaches of space and allow him to provide instantaneous communication between his forces. C'baoth, on the other hand, is intrigued to learn about other surviving Jedi, Luke and Leia Skywalker, and he wishes to have a role in shaping the future of the Jedi Order. As Leia is pregnant with the next generation of Skywalker children, if C'baoth was to take over their training, then he could shape the future in his own image. The man is an egomaniac. He's a dangerous tyrant who serves as the perfect antithesis of everything that the calm, moralistic Obi-Wan Kenobi presented in the original films. By starting with these three antagonists, Thrawn, C'baoth, and the subservient Palayan trapped between them, Zahn provides the motives for conflicts that will spread out over all of his future 3 books. However, he also intertwines this storyline right off the bat with his other new creations, the smuggler Talon Karrde and his close associate Mara Jade. Now, Karrde is pitched as having replaced Jabba the Hutt as the preeminent smuggler kingpin in the area, although his organisation is certainly very different from the fawning sycophancy shown in the original films when it came to Jabba's palace. Karrde is first and foremost a businessman, one who's keen to remain neutral in the war, although this becomes increasingly difficult as he becomes more and more entwined into the personal attention and intricacies of Thrawn. His position is further complicated by the unknown history of Mara, who we slowly learn had a very close association with the Empire, and still has a personal, ongoing hatred of Luke Skywalker, who she has vowed to kill. Thrawn comes to Card because he has access to Ysalamiri, small reptiles with the unique power to push back the Force. To the lay reader, it looks as though Thrawn collected these creatures to give him a tactical advantage in his negotiations with C'baoth, preventing the Mad Jedi Master from just lashing out and killing him on the spot. But the beauty of these books is that all things serve multiple purposes. Thrawn uses the Ysalamiri to control C'baoth, but he needs them for purposes that are not revealed until the third book of the trilogy. And the Ysalamiri are a perfect addition to the Star Wars mythology. They're a natural extension to the rules and ideas already established, a conceptual creation that Zahn makes use of to add challenge to the stories, to create new antagonistic threats that prevent Luke from ever seeming overpowered. After all, as multiple years of further Star Wars tales have shown, when your protagonist can block laser fire, when they can run as fast as a train, jump over buildings with inhuman agility, move things from great distance just with using the power of their minds, and they can also influence and control the thoughts of others, what possible challenge can they face? How do you introduce effective stakes that the reader should care about and grip and interest the audience when your protagonists are effectively superhuman? What works on film for the wow factor does not work in books. And Zahn gets over this problem by presenting the danger of Thrawn extremely clearly. Luke, Han and Leia are all personally invested in the survival of the Republic that they rebirthed at the end of the last film. Thrawn's ambition is not just to kill Luke, Han and Leia, although he certainly will if he can. His ambition is to bring everything that they have created crashing down. Due to C'baoth's influence, he tries to kidnap Leia because he wants her unborn children. So there is real danger throughout for the main characters and the future generations coming into play. However, later, the tension becomes one of unknown loyalty, as Luke has to interact with Talon Karrde and Mara Jade, one of which is openly hostile to him, and as the two have to decide whether their loyalties truly lie between the New Republic or the Empire. The war is all-consuming, and no one can remain neutral for long. And Thrawn's ultimate downfall in Heir to the Empire involves Lando Calrissian, whom he accidentally brings into the story by raiding his mining operations. Again, Zahn apes concepts and themes from the movies, but he tells them in a new way. Calrissian has established himself as an independent businessman, but Thrawn's intervention forces him back into the New Republic's arms. Calrissian and Solo's friendship brings them to Karrde's attention, and then this brings them back to the Sluice Van shipyards, which is where Thrawn finally assaults the Republic fleet whilst it's being repaired. The cloaking technology stolen from Wayland and the equipment stolen from Lando are all displayed as Zahn plots out a grand heist, where the Grand Admiral is not just seeking a battle to destroy the enemy forces, but he's actually a massive attempt to steal it. However, whilst Thrawn's tactical planning and genius has allowed him to manipulate every one of his enemies individually, it is their personal and emotional connections that bring them together and allow them to find an escape and a flaw in his plan. In the end, it's not clear which side wins. Thrawn is indeed prevented from stealing the fleet, however he does functionally cripple it for the foreseeable future, giving him a massive tactical advantage in the war. The creations within this book were so iconic that they would shape the Star Wars franchise throughout the 1990s. The tale of Heir to the Empire is self-contained, but it lays groundwork for follow-on stories that would re-examine the themes of the original movies whilst never getting repetitive. The tale plays out at multiple scales, from the deeply personal, emotional conflicts of Mara Jade as she toys with killing a defenseless Luke, to the macro politics of space fleets outmaneuvering each other across multiple star systems. It is so well judged, I would recommend this book even to anyone who has never seen a Star Wars movie. It's simply great storytelling. For anyone disappointed that we never got to see Luke Skywalker, or indeed any of the original heroes, in their prime in the Disney era sequels. This trilogy of books acts as a hallmark of the franchise that could have been. In 2014, Disney declared that all of the expanded universe produced before they purchased the Star Wars series was no longer canon, although they have since borrowed elements of these series, such as the character of Thrawn himself. Currently though, in 2020, there is nothing in these books that contradicts the movies directly, except for the identities of Leia's children. Zahn promises the rise of a pair of Jedi twins, two of them who will go on to help Luke refound the Jedi Order. In the new Disney continuity, Han and Leia have but one son, and one whose future is far more twisted. With just a few lines of rewritten dialogue, this original Thrawn trilogy, it could be made to fit again, and it would fill in the gap between the original series and the sequel movies beautifully. Adapted at the time as both comics and then audiobooks, this series was rightly hailed as a classic and worthy of being remembered. Just because it's old doesn't mean it doesn't have anything to offer. And if there is anyone out there yearning for more Star Wars, now that the sequels have played out, whether they found them fulfilling or disappointing, it doesn't matter. You could do far worse than going back to these books and seeing the ambitions of Grand Admiral Thrawn play out for yourself.